I'm Elise. I'm 62 years old, and I've lived in the same house for over 3 decades. I raised my son here, buried my husband from here, and kept this place standing with my own 2 hands when life gave me every reason to give up. That evening, I was rinsing off the last dish when Jake walked into the kitchen. His arms were crossed, his jaw tight, and his eyes, for the first time in his life, wouldn't meet mine. I thought maybe something was wrong. Maybe he needed to talk, so I dried my hands and gave him my full attention. He didn't waste a second. "Mom, Rachel's parents are moving in next week. You'll need to be out before then." I laughed, confused. I thought he was joking, making some weird attempt at humor, but his face stayed hard. "What are you talking about, Jake? This is my house." He shrugged like it didn't matter. "It's just more practical," he said. "Rachel's parents need a stable place. You'll figure something out." My chest tightened, and the air in the room seemed to shift. I kept looking at him, waiting for a sign that this was some twisted test of patience. But he wasn't joking. His voice got firmer, colder, like he was reading off a script he'd rehearsed a dozen times in his head. "You've had your time here, now it's ours. Rachel thinks it's best if we have the space for our future." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I could feel the sting in the back of my throat, but I swallowed it. Then Rachel walked in, holding her phone and sipping a glass of wine like she was walking through someone else's open house. She didn't even look at me when she said, "Is she still here?" Her voice dripped with irritation like I was some overdue houseguest. Jake turned to me, eyes flat. "You should start packing tonight." I pressed my hand against the counter to steady myself. This house, every brick and beam I built after his father died. I worked 2 jobs to keep the mortgage paid to buy Jake, his cleats, his books, his first phone. And now he was telling me I didn't belong here. I asked him why. Just one word. Why he didn't flinch. "Because this is our family now, Rachel's family. You'll be fine. You've got friends, haven't you?" Rachel leaned against the doorway, that same glass of wine still swirling in her hand. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," she said, eyes still locked on her phone. I turned to Jake again, looking for some flicker of guilt of memory of the boy I once knew. Instead, he narrowed his eyes. "You've always said you wanted peace, right? Well, maybe this is how you get it. I don't need the drama. Go stay with Linda or someone. Or just go." He paused, lips curling into something mean. "I don't care." I stood there, the air so thick it felt like drowning. My hands were damp from the dish towel still clenched by my side. I wasn't going to cry. Not in front of them. Not when Rachel was smirking like she'd just won a game she thought I didn't know I was playing. "Fine," I said. That was all. One word. Jake blinked, surprised, maybe expecting a fight, but I just nodded once, calm as I could manage, and walked past them toward the stairs. Each step felt like a betrayal. Each picture on the wall, every creak in the floorboards whispered memories I wasn't ready to leave behind. But I knew I had to. If I stayed another minute, I'd fall apart. When I reached the top of the stairs, I paused, hand gripping the banister so hard my knuckles turned white. I looked down at them. Rachel was laughing softly now, her voice light and cold. Jake didn't say a word. Not a single word as I turned, walked into my bedroom and closed the door behind me. That was the night my son told me I didn't belong in my own home. And that was the night I decided to let them think they'd won. Because what they didn't know was that everything would change the next morning. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at the room that once held my entire world. The quilt I made the year Jake started middle school was still folded at the foot of the bed, soft from years of use. I reached out and touched it, my fingers tracing the stitches like they were memories woven into the fabric. The closet creaked when I opened it, the familiar sound echoing too loudly in the quiet. I pulled out the old brown suitcase from the top shelf. It still smelled faintly like cedar and old cologne. My hands trembled as I unzipped it. I hadn't used this suitcase since Jake's college orientation. Back then, I was crying because I missed him already. Now I was leaving the house, and he couldn't wait to push me out of it. I folded each shirt slowly, pressing it down flat. A few pairs of slacks, a cardigan, and the blue blouse I wore to his wedding. I hesitated over that one, holding it up to the light before folding it gently into the bottom of the bag. Every drawer I opened felt like a wound. A framed photo of me and my late husband smiled back at me from the nightstand. I picked it up, cradling it in my hands. His smile was still the same, steady and kind. I wondered what he'd say if he saw this. I wondered what he'd think of Jake now. Downstairs, I heard laughter. Rachel's voice, high and smug, cut through the quiet like a knife. She was talking to someone on the phone, probably her mother. I caught bits and pieces. "It's all ours now. Finally, can you believe it?" I closed my eyes, holding the photo tighter. That word ours hit me like ice in the chest. My house, the one I kept warm through winters and storms, had been reduced to some kind of prize they thought they won. I didn't cry. Not even when I sat on the floor next to the closet, pressing my back against the wall like it could hold me up. The pain sat in my chest like a stone, heavy but unmoving. I didn't want them to hear me break. Instead, I packed. Slowly. Deliberately. The more I packed, the more it sank in. I was really leaving. I paused at the bathroom mirror and stared at myself. My face looked tired, older than it had that morning. But my eyes were dry. Clear. Cold even. When I zipped the suitcase shut, the sound seemed to echo across the house. I sat still for a moment, then picked it up and walked downstairs. They were in the living room. Rachel curled up on the couch like she already owned the place. She glanced at me, didn't say a word. Jake didn't look up. I didn't stop. I walked straight to the front door and opened it. The night air hit me like a slap. Cold, clean, honest. For one brief second, I looked back. Just long enough to burn that image into my mind. The two of them sitting where my husband used to read the Sunday paper, where I used to hold Jake on my lap and sing to him when he had the flu. I stepped outside, pulling the door closed behind me. The sound of it clicking shut felt final. I stood on the porch, my suitcase by my side, and let the silence wrap around me. They thought they broke me. They thought they won. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know that in letting me go, they set something free. I walked to my car, opened the trunk, and slid the suitcase inside. My fingers lingered on the handle for a moment before I shut it. I stood there breathing, letting the cold settle deep in my bones. And then I got in, turned the key, and drove away. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. Lisa lived in a quiet neighborhood across town, the kind of place with trimmed hedges and calm porches. I pulled into her driveway just after 10, the engine still humming, as I sat there for a second, gripping the steering wheel. My fingers were cold, but my mind was sharp. She opened the door before I knocked, like she knew I'd come. Her eyes searched my face, but she didn't ask what happened. I walked inside and we sat down in the same kitchen where we'd shared coffee and stories for years. Only now the air felt different. I didn't waste time. I told her Jake did it. He told me to leave. She just nodded, her expression unreadable. Then I said what mattered most. "It's time." Lisa stood up without a word and walked to her office. When she came back, she was holding a file folder with my name on it. Inside were the documents we'd signed 6 months ago, when my gut told me something wasn't right. Back then, Rachel had started asking questions about the mortgage. Jake suddenly cared about property taxes. My instincts screamed, and I listened. I asked Lisa to draw up the papers and I transferred the deed. On paper, the house hadn't belonged to me for a while. It belonged to Lisa. It was a quiet move. I didn't tell anyone, not even Linda. I just wanted to protect what was mine in case something like this happened. And now it had. Lisa slid the folder toward me. "Everything's in place," she said. "You just say the word." My hands didn't shake as I picked it up. My voice didn't crack. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Let's do it." In that moment, I wasn't broken. I wasn't a woman kicked out of her own home. I was a woman who had prepared for war before it began. They thought they were clever. They thought I was weak. But the truth was, I had already built my exit while they were plotting my fall. The notice went out the next morning. Lisa's firm handled everything. It was clean, legal, and non-negotiable. Rachel and Jake had 72 hours to vacate the property or face formal eviction and possible legal consequences. I didn't need to be there to know how it unfolded. Lisa's assistant served the papers at noon sharp. I imagined Rachel answering the door, still in her robe, coffee in hand, pretending to be confused, as if she hadn't spent the last week rehearsing her victory. Jake called me less than 20 minutes later. His name lit up my phone like a fire alarm, but I didn't pick up. I let it ring until it stopped. Then it rang again and again. By the fifth call, I finally answered. His voice was full of rage. He demanded to know what I'd done. I let him talk, let him pace and spit and throw blame like it was going to change anything. When he finally stopped yelling, I spoke. I told him the house was never his, that he had no right to throw me out of a place that legally didn't belong to him. I said I gave him every chance to be decent and he chose cruelty. Now he had 72 hours to figure out what to do next. There was a pause. I could almost hear Rachel in the background, hissing questions he didn't have answers to. He tried to pivot to soften, but I didn't budge. This wasn't about revenge. This was about boundaries. This was about reminding them that actions have consequences. When I hung up, my hands were steady. For the first time in days, my pulse felt calm. I didn't gloat. I didn't cry. I just sat there staring at the quiet around me, knowing I had taken back something they tried to steal. Control. Dignity. Power. They thought they left me with nothing. But now they were the ones packing boxes. And I was just getting started. I woke up the next morning to a phone that wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I thought it was Lisa with an update. But when I saw dozens of notifications from Facebook, missed calls, and unread messages, my stomach sank. Linda walked into the guest room holding her phone, her face pale. She didn't say a word, just handed it to me. The screen showed a photo of Rachel, one hand on her belly, tears in her eyes, with a caption that made my blood run cold. My cruel mother-in-law kicked us out while I was pregnant. We have nowhere to go. I stared at it, mouth-dry, fingers tightening around the phone. Hundreds of comments had already piled underneath. People I didn't know were calling me names I'd never even imagined. How can a mother be so heartless? Shame on her. Someone even wrote, "I hope you die alone." I sat there reading every word like they were carved into my skin. I felt myself shrink. For a moment, I wondered if I had gone too far. Maybe I should have walked away quietly and let them take everything. My hands shook as I scrolled the room, spinning a little. Linda told me to stop reading. She said it wasn't worth it, but I couldn't look away. Each comment chipped away at the part of me that still believed I was the good guy in this story. For a few minutes, I let the guilt wash over me. Maybe I had lost myself in this fight. Maybe I really was just angry and bitter. But then I saw it. Buried in Rachel's long-winded plea for sympathy, there was one line that made everything stop. We were planning to fix the house and maybe even sell it to start our new life. I read it 3 times before it clicked. Sell it. Sell my house. The house she never owned. The house she tried to steal. My hands stopped shaking. I took a screenshot and saved it. My breath slowed. Something hard settled in my chest. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't cruel. I was protecting myself from people who smiled to my face while plotting behind my back. That sentence changed everything. I called Lisa right away. She answered before the first ring even finished. I told her what I found, read it aloud. Her voice stayed calm. "That's intent to defraud Elise. That post just made our case a whole lot stronger." I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone warm in my hand, my heart still racing. But it wasn't fear anymore. It was a focus. Everything they did, every lie they told, every insult they flung online had finally exposed the truth. They wanted the world to see me as a monster, But now the world would see them for what they really were: thieves, manipulators, liars. I stood up, my legs steady again. I wasn't going to explain myself online. I wasn't going to argue in the comments or beg strangers to believe me. The law would do the talking now. They wanted a war. They were about to get one. Only this time, I wasn't on the defensive. I was leading the charge. Lisa's office was quiet when I walked in, the kind of quiet that made every step feel heavier. The papers were already laid out on her desk, crisp and official, with my name typed neatly at the top. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. We both knew why I was there. I sat down across from her and stared at the documents for a long time. My eyes moved over the words, but they didn't feel real at first. Filing for damages, formal eviction, intent to defraud. The weight of those terms sat heavily in my chest. Lisa waited, giving me space. She knew this wasn't just paperwork. This was blood. This was family. This was me drawing a line I never wanted to draw. I thought of Jake as a boy, his small hand reaching for mine in a crowded parking lot. I thought of the nights I stayed up sewing costumes and fixing broken toys. I thought of every sacrifice I made to give him more than I ever had. And then I thought of the way he looked at me last week, like I was a stranger, a burden. I heard his voice again, cold and flat, telling me to get out. I felt Rachel's smirk burning behind my eyes. My throat tightened. My fingers hovered over the pen. For a second, I wasn't sure I could do it. But then I remembered that line in Rachel's post, the one where she talked about selling the house like it was hers to sell. That was it. That was the moment I stopped being unsure. I picked up the pen and signed. My hand didn't shake. When I looked up, Lisa gave me a quiet nod and slid the papers into a folder. "It's done," she said. I stood slowly, my body both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I finally stood up for myself. Heavier because I knew this wasn't about property anymore. This was about love that had been twisted into something unrecognizable, about knowing when to stop giving, about choosing to protect what little was left of me. The news broke late in the evening. I had just finished folding laundry when my phone lit up with a headline. "Local couple faces legal action for attempted property fraud." Their names were right there, clear as day. Jake and Rachel. I sat down slowly, the basket still in my lap. My heart didn't race. It didn't drop either. It just sat there heavy and unmoved. I had known this was coming, but knowing and seeing are never quite the same. Then the message came through. It was short. Just 6 words. "I'm sorry, Mom, I messed up." I stared at it until the screen dimmed, and then tapped it awake again. The words didn't change, but my heart did. I remembered him as a boy. His arms wrapped around my waist on the first day of school. His tears when he couldn't find his favorite toy. His smile when I brought home his favorite pie on his birthday. I remembered how much I loved him before he forgot how to love me back. For a moment, I felt something rise in my chest. Not anger, not forgiveness, just sorrow. A quiet ache that wrapped itself around the years we lost. I wanted to call him. I wanted to believe he meant those words. I wanted it all to go back to before. But then I remembered what came after. The silence, the orders, the betrayal, the way he let someone else erase me from my own life. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, erased, typed again. Every reply sounded like something I would have said before. Before I learned that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. I typed one final sentence. "I'll always love you, but I can't save you from yourself." I read it once, twice, and hit send. Then I set the phone down and walked away. He apologized. I heard it, but I also knew that some bridges don't burn in flames. They rot quietly from the inside until there's nothing left to stand on. 6 months later, my mornings begin with the sound of waves tapping gently at the shore just beyond my window. I live in a small apartment by the ocean now, where the air smells like salt and fresh bread. The kitchen is tiny, but it's mine. Most days I wake early, tie my apron, and bake for a small cafe down the street. My hands move slowly through the dough, shaping each loaf with care. It's honest work, quiet work, and it gives me something steady to hold. There's no shouting here, no slammed doors, no wine glasses clinking behind laughter meant to cut. Just the hum of the oven and the rhythm of my breath. I keep my phone on silent now. Jake hasn't called since the last message. I haven't sent another. Sometimes I stare at the screen, wondering what I'd say if I did. But then, I remember how far I've come. I'm not angry anymore. Not even sad, really. Just clear. I know what I gave. I know what was taken. And I know what I've reclaimed. There's a photo on the wall, just one. And Jake, when he was 5, his arms around my neck, our cheeks pressed close. I look at it sometimes while my coffee cools. Not with pain, but with something softer. Hope, maybe. Or simply memory. I still love him. That part never left, but now I love myself too. And that's the part I protect. As the sun climbs higher over the ocean, I open the windows and let the breeze in. It touches my face like something that knows I've earned this stillness. I whisper quietly, "Wherever you are, I hope you find your way." Then I turn back to the counterbrush flower from my hands and keep going. Not for anyone else, not to prove anything, just because I can. And because for the first time in a long time, peace feels like home.